this show. Just wanted to make a couple of announcements. The show is about 20 to 25 minutes long, and right afterwards there will be a 15 to 20 minute post-show discussion with me and the actors. So if you could please stay in your seat as soon as when the show is done. Also, just wanted to let you all know the historical aspects of the show are all in fact true. Very important to think about. And also we are collecting donations for Puerto Rico. So I think Angela will be outside after the show with a box for that. Yeah, and so enjoy the show.
Eye of Hurricane Maria just came ashore in Puerto Rico. The storm weakened slightly overnight to a strong Category 4, but officials there predict entire towns will have to be rebuilt.
The first pictures now coming in from Puerto Rico after taking a direct hit. Hurricane Maria slamming into the island, and as you heard, one official saying the island is destroyed.
It's been 22 days.
29.
Day 33.
It's day 40 since Hurricane Maria hit.
I still don't have electricity.
There's still people in need of food, water.
It's been more than 50 days and we're still fucked.
We have to go. Abuelo.
No me quiero ir, niñeta.
There's nothing left for you here. Come on, we're going home.
Este es mi hogar.
We've talked about this. You need to start practicing your English.
Now why must I speak English? ¿Qué le debo a los americanos? Ellos se han olvidado de nosotros. Coño.
I can't deny that, but they are helping to rebuild this place. You just have to stay with us for a few months.
Sure, they will come, and they will fix my windows, and they will fix my doors. They'll make sure that my roof does not leak. But what about my furniture? Or my pictures, the memories that were held in this house? Esas cosas no las puedan repasar, no las puedan arreglar.
Well, something is better than nothing.
And you see, this is why I did not want you raised in the States. You do not understand.
What?
Eres una gringa puertorriqueña. Now you say you go to law school to help us increase representation, that you write your plays on what it means to be Puerto Rican, but you have not lived our struggle.
Well, at least I'm doing something. All you do is sit here and complain about how the United States has wronged you. I'm trying to make a change.
Change? Now what change do you think you can make working for them? If you knew what your people and your family had been through, you would not be so eager to side with them.
I'm not siding with anyone. And I don't need a lecture on Puerto Rican history.
Oh, yet you would have me live with those murderers and colonizers. Ven acá. Quiero contarte algo.
Can we do this later? We have to go.
One story, niñita. Sit. It'll be just like when you were younger. You used to love hearing my stories.
Fine. But just one.
Do you know why I have this flag?
Because it looked nice.
It is not only because she's beautiful, but also because within her are my honor and my spirit. And it is not just a piece of cloth with 5 stripes and a star. It is the spirit sacrifice of those who have died for it. Those who have been inspired, given their souls and lives so that it has a tomorrow. It is the island that we were born on, the mother we love, the honor of our children.
I don't understand.
Well, let me show you. Cierra tus ojos. And what do you see?
Nothing.
Focus. Start small. What do you hear?
I hear it, Coqui.
Muy bien. Now focus on the sound. What do you see?
I see a building. Parque de Bombas.
That's the city of Ponce.
There are people here. They're marching. La Borinqueña's playing. Wait. What are the police doing? They're pointing guns at the marchers. Wait!
It is Boricua. Our island's sky is your sky. Its glory is your glory. Its spirit is your spirit. And its story is your story.
Okay, so when was that?
That was Palm Sunday of 1937. A peaceful civilian march led by the Nationalist Party began the Ponce massacre after police began firing into the crowd. My mother and father barely escaped with their lives.
Your parents were there?
Yes. And it was after this that I stopped saluting the American flag.
How old were you?
7.
But I still don't understand. Why were the police shooting at a peaceful march?
The U.S. appointed Governor Banton Winship told the police to stop the demonstration by any means necessary.
Okay, so what were they marching for?
Their leader at the time had been arrested for sedition.
So what happened afterwards?
Nothing.
What?
They officially blamed the nationalists who had no weapons on them. 150 nationalist marchers were imprisoned, and not a single police officer. The governor even stayed in power.
Wow.
Los Estados Unidos es un gobierno malo, especialmente con Puerto Rico. And I joined the Nationalist Party because I was tired of my island and its people being exploited. But it doesn't matter. All they do is ignore us and arrest us. Nos tratan como basura. Would you like to see more?
Absolutely not. Whatever that was, I never wanted to happen again. I was beaten, shot. I think I was killed.
But you are alive, here, now. You are just beginning to understand what it means to be Puerto Rican.
Then I'll settle with just a little bit of understanding. Let's go, abuelo.
Do you know, when I realized it would be you who would carry on our family's future? Now, you were 5 years old, and your friend was being picked on by a 9-year-old. And you told him to stop picking on your friend, but he didn't listen. So you shoved him to the ground. And you knew you might get in trouble or even hurt for doing this, but you did it anyway.
I did get in trouble. I had to stay after school and pick up the classroom because of that.
You learned young that we do not live in a fair world. Yet you did what you did because you knew it was the right thing to do. And this is why you have to continue this journey as a child of empire. You feel beholden to the United States.
I'm not ignorant of what the United States does. Imperialistic tendencies, capitalist exploitation.
Yet you continue to watch these events unfold. You need to understand that by acting within the system, you only perpetuate.
Then what do you suggest I do?
You have to learn from your family history. Break the cycle of violence against Puerto Ricans and all other oppressed peoples. Come. Close your eyes. What do you see?
I'm in San Juan, on the way to school. There's a police car.
Cancel Miranda!
See,
We have reason to believe that you committed draft evasion.
I will not deny that charge.
I'm afraid you're going to have to come with me.
May I give my belongings to my friends first? Yo esto mi casa. Puede ser que no regrese en mucho tiempo.
Cancel Miranda, you are under arrest for refusing to submit to the draft. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you.
Abuelo, that was you. You were arrested?
It wasn't the only time either. The colonizer has a habit of arresting the rebellious.
Why would you go to jail so willingly? You didn't even deny the charge.
Well, if El Coqui could speak, surely it would say that it is less painful to fight than to cry out from cowardice.
That doesn't even make sense.
It's a metaphor. I knew what I had done, and I was proud. Why would I lie?
To not go to jail?
Well, if fighting for what I believed in meant going to prison, that was a sacrifice I was willing to make.
No tengo las mismas creencias que tú.
Yes, you do. Isn't there something that you love, that you need to protect? Some injustice in the world you want to right?
Yes, but I'm only a kid. Nobody's going to listen to what I have to say.
Oh, you are a Cancel. You come from a line of poets, doctors, activists, great makers of change. They will hear you. Just give them time.
¿Por qué yo? ¿Por qué no mi mamá? She's smarter, more qualified to make change happen, and she's a respected adult. Why am I the one experiencing these memories?
Your mother works very hard to give you the privilege that you have. And she does some of her own activism. But it's you with the ability to immerse yourself in it. Los jóvenes son los que creerán el futuro.
How old were you when you were arrested?
Younger than you. I was 18.
Where did they send you?
I was imprisoned in Tallahassee, Florida.
Really? I went to school there.
Lo sé.
¿Me puedes enseñar?
Come. Close your eyes. What What do you see?
I'm in a jail cell. Alone.
Good. Now open your eyes.
After several Puerto Ricans and I arrived in Tallahassee, for 40 days we were quarantined, separated from the rest of the prisoners. It was at this time that the problems started. It turns out the building was 2 stories, black people on the upper floor, white people on the lower. I am placed in that of the whites. The other 2 Puerto Ricans that came with me went to that of the blacks. I went up to the 2nd floor to play dominoes with my 2 compatriots, but the police gringo told me to go down to my section.
Go down to your section.
I replied that my section was where there are Puerto Ricans.
Ricans.
The 2 Puerto Ricans asked me to leave, so I did. 10 minutes later, I tried again, and the same discussion was repeated.
Go down to your section.
My section is where there are Puerto Ricans.
The criminal police in charge was a big redhead named Haynes, or something like that. It took me little time to find out that he was a racist, an unashamed racist. Haynes used racist terms against my friend Dimas. The next morning, when the racist guard Haynes was on patrol, I find myself half naked in a dungeon, with only a hole in the floor for biological needs. Incidentally, that dungeon was later declared as cruel and uncommon punishment by a gringa court.
They say there is no racism because they no longer lynch them. Now they kill the spirit. And they use cops. Where are you, Brother Malcolm? Where has your soul gone? And let's talk about racism in the street language. It's black, but of white soul. It's black, but it's fine. It's black, but it acts so well. It looks white. It's black, oh, but it knows a lot. And here are some words that are not so innocent. My past is so black that I'm ashamed. Don't cross a black cat. It's unlucky. If I'm in black, I'm in mourning. There is racism and classism in language, and it is not casual.
They wanted to get me out earlier, but I refused to excuse myself. I took advantage of the solitude by writing a novel. At 4 months, they take me out of the dungeon and put me in the bedrooms with the whites again. I came in 18 years old and left at 20.
No lo puedo hacer. No puedo hacer lo que tú hiciste. Why would anyone choose to suffer like that?
You can, and you have. You have felt our collective suffering for yourself.
And if I had the chance, I would never experience that again. Let's go, abuelo. Now.
No, wait, mi nieta, there is one last thing I have to share with you.
No. No more stories. Abuelo, I'm not like you. I'm Puerto Rican by blood, but not in my heart. Sure, I grew up eating rice and beans, but I barely speak Spanish. I don't hang out with Puerto Ricans back home, and I don't own a Puerto Rican flag, which is mandatory for some reason. You said it yourself. I'm a gringa.
Now you are, and always will be, Puerto Rican. let me tell you this one. Personally, truly like when you were younger, no experiences or flashbacks, solamente palabras. Here, I would like you to hold this. So first, you must understand that since the Europeans invaded this place, we have essentially been a colony. First with the Spanish, and then with the United States. We've been fighting for true independence for at least 100 years. Until 1947, we could not even elect our own governor. And then we got the U.S. sympathizer, Merin, who helped organize the Ley de la Mordaza, which made it so we could not fly Puerto Rican flags. We could not speak or campaign for independence. We could not even sing independence songs. And where was the First Amendment then, I wonder? Nevertheless, until 1952, we were officially a colony. And at this point, we were given an option to either continue to be a colony or to become a commonwealth. Even with so many countries around the world decolonizing, independence for us was never an option. You know, they made up this new word for us. Commonwealth. It had never been used before being applied to Puerto Rico. Because we have our own local government, we could no longer be considered a colony. So they gave us this new name, a commonwealth. In 1954, several nacionalistas and myself felt we needed to focus the status of Puerto Rico as a colony and the systematic raping of the Puerto Rican peoples to bring it to attention to the national community. And so on March 1st, we traveled to Washington, D.C., and once we got off the plane, it was gray and late and raining, but we continued on to the visitors gallery above the House of Representatives. And once we were there, one of my compatriotas, Lolita Lebron, she unfurled her Puerto Rican flag and shouted, "Viva Puerto Rico Libre!" as we took out our guns and began firing at the representatives. And I was arrested and imprisoned. First in Alcatraz, and then Leavenworth, and then Marion, for 25 years in all. And it wasn't all bad. I made many new compatriotas, including Nelson Mandela and Fidel Castro, both men fighting for their own causes.
You're a terrorist.
Maybe according to your education, I am. En los ojos de los Estados Unidos, perhaps my actions were those of a terrorist, but if my people are being exploited and I commit a freedom act to try and draw attention to their suffering, does that really make me a terrorist?
I guess until you're successful, then yes. The United States controls the labels, so if that's what they deem you, that's what you are to most people.
Then yes, I am a terrorist. But I prefer freedom fighter. Their labels mean nothing to me.
It's like there are always these groups vying for their own nationality, and in order to get it, whoever has the power has to approve it. Without them, we're terrorists.
Yes, but we cannot let the negativity of the world control us. We have to constantly remind ourselves of the beauty that surrounds us, what it is that we're fighting for.
That's easier said than done. El mundo está jodido, ¿qué podría ser?
It's going to be up to you. You're going to become your own woman with your own activism. And it doesn't have to be what I have done. But who knows? Maybe one day you'll be even more like me.
One day.
For me, at least, revolution has been a marathon. It is not a sprint. Every action just takes me one step closer to the end. Continue to learn about the atrocities that plague society and spread this knowledge. People need to know. Action comes from understanding. Then and now, the only way to get people's attention is to do something drastic.
Sorry. Hello? Sí, él está conmigo. Sorry, we got distracted. We'll be right out. Bye, Mom.
I suppose it's time to go.
If we don't leave now, we're gonna miss our flight.
Mayagüez will always be my point of departure and return. There is in the whole solar system no sky like its sky, and no hills like its hills, no people like its people, no neighborhood like La Mirada. Mayagüez will always be where my memories begin, where I learned to walk, and where I always return. The streets will accompany me to my last room. Mayagüez will always be the center of my universe.
Regresarás. Te lo prometo.
Sí, lo sé.
Ready?
The birth of a hero is a precise moment. The most well-known and therefore dearest hero is like the sun, which shines to show us that the poem Rafael Cancel Miranda is also a star who shines brightly. That is how he rescues us from colonial oblivion. The young man from Dulces Labios neighborhood of Mayagüez who in an instant had gunpowder on the back of his hand and sent doves flying from the loud rumble, showed the world our reality as an occupied territory. Because for Cancel Miranda, that poem of heroes, that star, the truly free person wants all to be free. And I will continue to fight. Porque para Cancel Miranda, ese eore poema, esa estrella, el hombre verdaderamente libre quiere que todos lo sean. Y del infierno o la gloria, seguiré dando batalla. Mis cenizas serán pólvora, escondida en la montaña.
Start us off, I just want to ask a couple general questions. First of all, has anyone ever encountered theatrical material like this with similar material and themes? No? I guess my follow-up question was if anyone's encountered anything like that on FSU's campus, but that is not applicable here. Great, okay, wonderful. So to start us off, I thought I would ask you, Christian, how you first came to get the idea to write about this subject matter specifically for your thesis.
So about a year ago, I decided I was going to do an undergraduate thesis. just because I like dying. And I literally just kind of came across this thing. It's kind of my party tale that my great-grandfather, Rafael Cancel Miranda, was arrested and went to Alcatraz for shooting up Congress. That was my fun fact of Christian Mercado's life. And I knew about it and I was like, this is fine. And then one time I was at my house back in Jacksonville. My mom's closet is the only one with a full body mirror, so I was checking myself out, and I literally just saw the poetry book and it said his name, and I was like, oh my god, he's a real person. And I picked it up and I read it, and I kind of just realized in that moment there's this story to tell that people have forgotten about, and I thought that people needed to know. And so in that instant, I knew what my thesis was going to be about. I think a day later I messaged Sammer, who's my thesis director, and was like, I know what I'm doing this show, it's going to be on Puerto Rican nationalism, and yeah, it kind of all stemmed from there. I spent a long time writing the show. It was all of last semester, that was my project last semester. And then yeah, it kind of evolved as once I cast it and once we started getting into the whole thing, things changed. A lot of dialogue has changed since the very beginning. It was really cheesy, and the grandfather was a wizard, kind of. Not a literal wizard, but he spoke like a wizard, and every single rehearsal was I sound like I'm Gandalf. And so yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to take a couple of questions from you guys. Yeah.
What, if it was a specific choice, why did you keep some of the dialogue in Spanish, or not have a translation for people who wouldn't understand?
That had a lot to do with the fact that it was specifically a Puerto Rican story. And I feel I'd say 90% of the Spanish words, you could get the meaning of it whether or not there was a translation was given. So I actually talked to a lot of people about that, because my original one actually had less Spanish. And then everyone was put more Spanish in, because people are going to get it. I was worried about that, but apparently what they had told me was that it would be fine. And I think especially, what it became is that Abuelo started speaking Spanish. He didn't want to, and of course he would speak a lot of Spanish, but the granddaughter, who is essentially a representation of me, and I don't speak Spanish, what my goal was that as the show progressed and as she experienced these memories and kind of became tapped into the cultural memory of Puerto Rico, she would then learn more Spanish. Yeah.
How does that, for the actors, how does that sort of affect a performance, doing it in multiple languages? How is that different from doing a monolingual show?
Claudia speaks Spanish. So,
yeah.
I'm in Spanish 3. Yeah, it's different. I think having Kristen and Claudia here, Claudia's been coaching me a lot, which is great. Shout out to Professor Romero Mesas for helping me with Spanish 3. I think as long as you know what the words mean, they flow with the lines, and Kristen's here to explain the intention as the original writer, I think everything works out.
I think also to keep the integrity of the characters, there needed to be that Spanish in there, and the integrity of the play for sure. So
definitely.
That was important to me.
Some more questions? We'll take a couple before they answer. Yeah.
Christian, you said when you saw the poetry book, you're like, oh my god, he's a real person. Have you never met him?
I have never met him in my memory. There's a picture of him holding me as a 1-year-old child. That's the only time. So tomorrow, when he comes, will be the first time that I actually meet him.
That's so cool!
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, he's coming to see the show?
Yeah. He's flying from Puerto Rico.
I would have come tomorrow.
I posted it in the event page. That's on you.
You're right. That's on me. I don't read.
That's
my
fault. Well, moving on from the saltiness, are there any other questions? Yeah.
My specific question is for Claudia. How did your Cuban heritage inspire you in this?
I think it helps me a lot. Tonight especially, that last monologue that Abuelo has really gets to me, about how, home is where you first learn to walk, and it's where you see yourself ending. So I think it helped me very easily connect to this character, That being said, also, I think it's really interesting that Cuba, while it was still in its capitalist stages, was very much still being influenced by the United States, and there were a lot of things going on that it was the reason that these like revolts started happening, and whether or not Castro did it for the right reasons and whatever happened afterwards is like its own story, but there are definitely like things needed to change, and the Cuban people felt that, and that also helps me connect a lot to this concept.
Definitely.
So I read an early draft of this play.
Yeah.
Obviously, the character was you in the beginning, and I was wondering what the process was like for like that becoming Claudia, and whether her being a woman changed any of your interpretation of what you were writing and doing rewrites and things.
So when I originally wrote it, it was grandson, but that was only because I legitimately saw myself in the role, but I didn't necessarily have a gender or sex in mind when I was writing it. And Claudia was one of the first people who came to my mind to play the role. And I guess I was a little nervous at first, and then in the Heights, this is just a fun fact, in the Heights, the character who represents Lin-Manuel is Nina. Nina's story is more parallel to Lin-Manuel's than any other character. And having seen that already be done, in a sense of having a different gender play someone else's story, I didn't see a problem with that because I knew Claudia could do it.
Claudia, how did it affect your process working with someone who wrote a part as themselves?
A lot of jokes about me being Christian.
Right.
Also, it was interesting, I think. For me, the hard part was more about when going into the memories as Cancel, because he is a man, and so figuring out during the process how he walked, what parts of me I would incorporate into the role, and what parts of him I would incorporate into the role. So I think that was the more challenging part for me. But again, I connected to the story from the moment I read it, so gender didn't play that much of a part for me at all.
For sure.
Have you been in contact with your great-grandfather about this show? Does he knows?
Yeah.
Okay. Are any of the words actually his?
Oh, a lot of them.
Okay.
All of the poetry is translated from the book. Like the last Maya Guez monologue is translated. Anything that pretty much the grandfather says that's poetic is translated. The recording is translated. I stole a lot. Lots of things. And to answer the first part of that question, yeah, my grandfather has his email, and so they've all been communicating through this long email chain that I'm attached to. And yeah, he was excited, and I'm very looking forward to it. I'm very highly stressed and nervous, as I have been for the past 3 weeks, but yeah, it's a thing happening.
Are there any other questions from the audience? I did want to ask just one more thing. With this sort of source material, obviously it's sort of very historically rooted, and that's somewhat different than a lot of conventional shows that you would do. So how is the rehearsal process different, taking that into account, than your Music Man rehearsal?
It's for me, it was just a show I wrote. So I was it didn't do anything to me.
Can you read that last sentence one more time, Sean, please?
So just as opposed to something with less, I guess, controversial subject matter, how does a rehearsal process change?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit interesting because the basis of the production is Christian's research and his experience with his own family and things like that. We still have, there are videos in the aftermath of the shooting. We have the mugshots of Cancel as he goes to prison. He has lots of videos where he talks about the subject matter that he's so passionate about. So there's a lot to draw from. Also, the context of the show fits pretty well with the Act 2 season, which is pretty encouraging. It's really exciting to hear some stories that haven't been heard before, which, if anything, is just kind of a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Not fun. Fun's not quite right.
Yeah, I was like sending Ed videos. I was like, you need to watch this. Skip to this part of this video. Like, I sent him like 6 different hour-long videos of Cancel Miranda talking, just because I was like, it's here. You can see his hand motions and the way he talks and the rhythm of his speech. So it's like interesting having like all of the actual, like having physical historical things that can help, I guess, find the characters.
Yeah. I think also historical context was really important when like looking at the script, especially in like the beginning stages when the script was like still changing and we were still talking about what it was based on and what we were trying to do with this show really helped shape the script in a way that Christian wanted it.
Awesome. And having like the
Take a quick moment to introduce yourselves.
I'm Christian Mercado, the writer-director. I said that earlier.
I'm Jessica Cancel. I am granddaughter to Rafael Cancel Miranda and mother to Christian Mercado. Woo!
Rafael Cancel Miranda, a wholesome Puerto Rican from top to bottom.
So to start us off, Christian, do you kind of want to introduce us to the process, how you arrived at this as your thesis? What is it starting you off?
So about a year ago, I decided I was going to do an honors thesis because I'm a nerd and I enjoy academia. And I had kind of been playing around. I knew I was going to do a theater project. Didn't know really what I was going to do. I kind of bounced around between like kabuki, no theater, and then over summer break actually, I went into my mom's closet because she is the only one who has a full body mirror, so I needed to like check that out. And I stumbled upon Cancel Miranda's poetry book. And at this point, I'd only known about him through like my mom, and kind of it was like a story I would tell because I knew that he was imprisoned in Alcatraz and that he like had spoken with like Fidel Castro and Nelson Mandela, but it was almost like this imaginary figure. And so I saw the book and it became this connection. And so I read it. And it kind of stemmed from there. As I read this poetry book, I kind of realized this aspect of myself I didn't really know about. And I kind of explored my own Puerto Rican-ness, if that's a thing. And yeah, and then I spent last semester writing the whole time, and then cast it, and we've been in rehearsal ever since, and I'm very happy with the way it turned out.
Amazing. So now we'll open this up to y'all. Any questions from the audience? We can get a show of hands from somebody. Yeah, absolutely.
Or maybe, I'm just wondering what the most exciting part of this honors thesis process was for you. Was it the writing, was it the collaboration, or what was it really like to work on something like that?
That's a tough answer, because all of it and none of it. Very stressful situation. I like haven't slept in weeks, just because I'm like always nervous. But at the same time, all of it's exciting. Writing the show was great. Having that first draft is like the big moment, because from there it's just kind of like just some tweaking and. But at the same time, getting to work with the actors and kind of like explore what the play actually was to become, because from the first draft to this, very, very, very different shows. A couple people in the room, like Charlie over there, can like attest that the show is different from the first draft. And yeah, so like I'd say the process as a whole is very, very exciting. Yeah.
So I know you asked him, but I'd like, because he's talking about it from his work, but from an external perspective, the process itself, watching him grow and learn and find his identity and connect to his great-grandfather who he's met over the years, but you know, he lives in Puerto Rico and we would go visit, but it wasn't a true connection. And I think through reading his poetry, really studying the history, not because his parents told him the history or anyone was telling him, hey, think about it this way, but that process of growth and understanding and connection has been amazing as a parent to watch. And then, you know, when my dad reached out to my grandfather, great-grandfather, you know, just the amazement and joy that my great-grandfather felt and the excitement of thinking, wow, you know, he's lived this life as a Puerto Rican nationalist and fighting for independence of Puerto Rico, but he's never pushed that on any of us. And here's 3 generations later, really seeing what it looks like and what it means today. And so that has been an amazing journey to watch that connection grow.
It's really wonderful. To kind of expand on that, and perhaps all of you could answer this one. What does the project mean to you? What's the intention of it? What is the next step for this kind of work?
For me, it was originally trying to identify myself in the sense that, I mean, you heard it, Claudia, in case you didn't kind of know this, Claudia's character is me, essentially grappling with these ideas. And she says it, that growing up, I always felt like a Puerto Rican gringo, essentially like a white person. I didn't really hang out with Puerto Ricans or Hispanics, and so I didn't feel this huge connection with Puerto Rico, which everyone else who I knew was Puerto Rican, or an islander, Cuban, Dominican. They all had this like great pride for who they are, and I had never really felt that. And so then through this project, I was really able to find that for myself.
Yeah. So I'm going to skip me and kind of translate.
Absolutely.
Abuelo, de lo que has oído y has escuchado, igual que has leído las entrevistas, ¿qué tú piensas y qué tú ves como el próximo paso de esta etapa? Así que Cristian hizo esta obra y está aprendiendo de quién es como puertorriqueño y qué él puede hacer para ayudar. ¿Qué piensas tú?
Keep on finding himself. Sometimes that's the hardest part, one of the hardest part in life, find out oneself. So when you find yourself, keep going on it. But as you could see, my English comes from Alcatraz. I'm Spanish speaking always. San Ann, a child, I've been fighting for my people out of love. See? I never expect a reward. Nunca esperé recompensa, never expect a reward. But I got a reward, I got it there. 64 years ago, the FBI brought me from Puerto Rico in a plane to Tallahassee, Florida, where I spent 2 years and a day. 64 years later, meant yesterday, it was my son, the one who brought me there, and my grandson driving the plane, bringing me to Tallahassee. See how life could change? Here, you know? And I feel good. I feel good. They invade my country in 1898, July 25. They invade my country, Puerto Rico. But before that, May 12, 1898, they bombed my people at San Juan, Puerto Rico, killing many Puerto Ricans at their houses, in the street, even the sanctuary, church, destroyed. See? They massacred us, they invaded us in July 25, 1898. In 1917, they imposed their citizenship on us. I don't accept it. I'm Puerto Rican citizen. One Puerto Rican citizen. Never accept it. See? Because I'm Puerto Rican. Why could anyone come from out there and impose their citizenship when you like slave? So, we fight. We fight. The Puerto Rican Parliament rejected. El Parlamento puertorriqueño rechazó la ciudadanía esta, but they imposed it. If the Congress of the United States passes a law saying that we are dogs, we should go back. See what I mean? Later, they commit the massacre. Franklin Delano Roosevelt sent to Puerto Rico as governor Blanton Winchell and a chief of police, Colonel Rick, to exterminate the nationalists, meaning us. Matar los nacionalistas, acabar con ellos. And they commit massacre. In October 24, 1935, killing 4 young Puerto Ricans, Curly. In March 21, 1937, under order from Blanton Winchy, General Blanton Winchy, they massacred my people. My parents were there. My mother, she went dressed in white and came dressed in red because she had to clothe to survive the bullet. And so on. They commit that against my people. And you know what? The same people who massacred my people want me to go to the army to kill Korean people. Why should I kill Korean people? They don't invade my country. They don't invade my country. Right? If I want to shoot at someone, it will be one who shot at my people. You know, no, I'm not violent. I was going to be a priest. Ask my wife. In Alcatraz, I was altar boy for 6 years. In Alcatraz prison, I spent, first, you know, I spent 2 years in Tallahassee, from 49 to 51. I spent 25 years plus, 6 in Alcatraz, 10 in Leavenworth prison, 9 in Marion prison. I was even in jail in Cuba, Batista, the bloody Batista put me in Cuba and threw me away of Cuba. I'm Puerto Rican. I'd be proud to be a real Cuban, and they're real Cuban, like they are good people in the United States. 2 of my best friends in the United States, and I'm good. You know, I'm not fighting the people of the United States, I'm fighting the bloody one who kill people all around the world. I'm fighting that. See, but I'm going to tell you something. And I got to tell my thing. 20 years I spent in prison, but as a free man, because I got my conscience free. Yo puedo verlo. I could see them, straight in the eye. I could see my lady, straight in the eye. Because I could see myself straight in the eye. See the point? And that's what I will tell my great-grandson. To always be able to look at himself and be proud of himself. They colonized my people. You know, they had 20 people actually power upon us, upon Puerto Rico. You know what is number 125? You know what they say? That they could sell us to any country without even asking for our consent. I'm not saying that. The so-called White House is not so white, but whatever. But the so-called White House, you're not saying that they could say, oh, I'm a slave. Any one of you, if you were treated like that, you will fight back. If you have a little piece of dignity, you respect yourself. And that's what the Puerto Rican nationalists are. People who respect themselves. I love my people. I love because I love my people, not because I hate no one. But I will fight anyone who do harm to my people. See? And that's the great-grandfather that he was talking about. My son is there. This doctor here, the community is there. Another one of my grandsons are there, and another great-grandson is there. And I will die. I will die with a smile, because I was able to be a wholesome Puerto Rican. That's it.
So we'll open this up one more time. We'll take a few questions at a time before we get to closing comments, just to be considerate of everyone's time. If we could start here.
Can you explain why they had to bring them to the American prisons? Why didn't they leave them in their country in prisons? Or, I don't understand why they had to come to Tallahassee.
Got it, absolutely. Was there another question over here that we could take also? Yes?
The buzz names Fidel Castro and Nelson Mandela came up, and I would love to know more about those interactions with those people.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about the time in prison that you talked about in the play. Why are they going to American prisons? Why are they being extradited that way? And also, while in prison, what was the contact with Nelson Mandela and Fidel Castro?
Si sabes por qué decidieron las prisiones aquí en Tallahassee y después Alcatraz, en vez de prisiones en Puerto Rico, decidieron porque son leyes federales. Igual quería saber si escucharon el nombre Fidel Castro y Nelson Mandela y cómo fue que lo conocieron.
Well, they sent me to the United States prison because I was fighting the empire of the United States. And they got the so-called federal law. We got in Puerto Rico the local law, you know, and then the federal law. It was the federal agent who locked me. So they sent me to the so-called federal prison here in the United States. I have never been locked up against any Puerto Rican morality or law. So it was a federal case, what they call a federal case. We are a colony, but they imposed their federal law in Puerto Rico. We could not impose our laws in them, but they could impose their law in us. So that's why they call the federal prison. Yeah, if I met them.
Sí, ¿cuál fue la relación?
Well, good. Better than with Trump. Better. You know, I came out of prison in September 10, 1979. Not only because an international campaign for our freedom, but because Cuba, Fidel, and the Cuban revolutionary government make an exchange, make a deal with Carter administration, and I came out of prison because that exchange of prisoners. And I got a photo with Fidel, he's putting me a recognition, and yeah. And Mandela, I came to New York when Mandela came, and the FBI tried 4 times so that Mandela and we could not see one another. And Mandela said in the New York Times how he felt bad about he could not be able to see the Puerto Rican nationalists. You know, because the FBI don't want us to meet one another. But I had met Fidel, not Batista. Batista put me in prison. You know, put me in prison and sent me to Puerto Rico. That made me feel proud. When somebody like Batista don't like you, that means you're all right. That was federal case, a federal law that they imposed in Puerto Rico. Thank you for having me.
So we'll open this up one more time. We'll take one more round of questions before we get your comments. Yes?
The play ended with leaving Puerto Rico and coming here. And so we got the history part of it and the activism and throughout Mr. Cancel Miranda's life until that point. So I'm wondering, I'm assuming you've lived a whole long life since then, and what your activism in your life, how you carried forth that message after. And you said that you're visiting, you're not living here, but like, what is it like to be here? What is that whole process been like since the end of the play?
That's a really lovely note for us to finish up on. So what is the next step for each of you? If you could leave these people with something, what would that be? And for Cancel, what does activism look like for you moving forward?
So I guess I'll start with what I'm going to do. I'm going to law school. That is a thing that I'm doing.
Yes, that's right. You better.
Christian's being very humble. Christian was accepted to Columbia Law earlier.
And kind of what I want to do is focus on representation and the entertainment industry. That's kind of what I want to do, because I feel like if we are able to tell kind of these stories and promote these stories that are not told, then it would revolutionize the way we interact and relate with each other. That's my plan.
So we're all answering them. Yeah, so my activism is very different because we're all allowed to have our own approach. So I work for a statewide not-for-profit here in Florida, PACE Center for Girls, and we have several of our staff. And so we work with at-risk girls. But at the end of the the day, it's about trying to do what's right in the world, right? And that means something different to each one of us, and that's what I hope my children have grown up with. My little one is right there too, and he also. But I think that's what we've learned, and we joke that it's in our blood, that standing up for what's right is in our blood, and that we're fighters. But that's all in a very different way. You know, some are militant, some are not, but it is about knowing what is that thing that you can impact in the world to make it a better place. You know, our country right now is going through some immense and very different changes, although I say that in my generation, I think people during the civil rights movement would have said, hey, our country is going through some tremendous changes, and so it happens. It's part of life. We can choose to complain about it, or we can choose to act on it. And so next step is just continuing to find what is that thing that I'm passionate about, and I work in that world, and then I have amazing kids that I can send out to the world that can fight those battles too.
That's right.
You know something? You know what they did to thousands of our women? Like my granddaughter here. You know what they did to thousands of Puerto Rican women? Sterilized them. Is that the right word?
Sterilized.
Sterilized them without their consent. To thousands of Puerto Rican like her. That will be enough to do whatever you have to do. You know? They even put, and I'm not overdoing, no lo estoy inventando, I'm not inventing it. Inject cancer. Dr. Rowe from the Rockefeller Foundation inject cancer in the Puerto Rican, saying that we don't deserve to be alive. But they don't let you know that. They commit massacre. That's democratically. They kill you in a democratic way. You fight back, you are terrorists. I'd be blessed to be one terrorist at that time. I hope you take care.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight. Thank you.
First off, we're going to take a little poll, a large audience. How many of you have ever experienced or heard of a story like this? And by like this, I mean one that involves Puerto Rican nationalism on U.S. soil. Yes? Hi, Ms. Nunez. Interesting. So, we're going to open the floor up. I just wanted to gauge and see where you guys were on this subject matter. Here's our panel. Hi. Do you want to introduce yourselves first?
You want to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Ed. I played Cancel Miranda.
Hi, I'm Claudia, and I played Granddaughter.
Christian Mercado, writer, director.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to start with one question that I've come up with, and that is, what was the catalyst for this entire idea? What spurred you forward on it?
So about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I decided I was going to do an undergraduate thesis because academia is my thing and I enjoy pain. And I didn't really know exactly what I was doing. A lot of things had been in my mind, but at the same time I was kind of trying to figure out like my future and like where my place in the world was. And then I went home that summer, and I went into my mom's closet because she has the only full body mirror, and I need to check myself out. And I looked up and I saw this poetry book by Rafael Cancel Miranda. And up until that point, I knew that name as kind of my great-grandfather who was sent to Alcatraz. It was kind of like a party story I would tell because I kind of knew this name, but I didn't really know that much about him. And then, so when I saw the poetry book, I took it and I read it, completely in Spanish. And for me, that was pretty difficult. But it kind of inspired me to, the moment I read it, I knew this is what my thesis had to be about. And my thesis director, Sammer, was like, yeah, man, that's exactly what you have to do. And so from that point on, I pretty much worked on translating the poetry book and then adapting it into this play, a lot of the dialogue, especially from Abuelo, is just directly translated poetry, like the Mayaguez monologue, direct translation. And so yeah, like last semester I spent a long time writing the script. We cast it, I cast Ed before winter break and I cast Claudia after winter break, and it's just been like a non-stop process since basically the first day of school. And here we are.
I'm going to open up the floor. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, I want to know why you felt the need to translate them.
Yeah. So I knew I would be playing to an English-speaking audience who couldn't speak fluent Spanish. And in my head, I think it's important to get the story out, and especially since we live, or like I live in an American, like in an English-speaking American society, I need to get people to listen. I needed to have it in English. But at the same time, it's a Puerto Rican story fundamentally. So that's why I kept a lot of Spanish in the play. And I think most of the Spanish that I kept, only a couple of them I think I translated with another person's dialogue, but a lot of it I left up just to kind of be interpreted based on the action.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah. I wonder what your thought, as you were playing, you said it's based on a true story, or factual stuff. So would you say, how would you almost talk about erasure as a whole, as your character almost growing up in America, or growing up in the States, and almost feeling like you're not Hispanic enough?
Right. My character's like pretty much based on Christian, so
that's what I guess.
Yeah. A lot of it was based on conversations with Christian, and like I think that's something that a lot of us. I'm first generation. I was actually born in Cuba. I moved here when I was 6, but I have a lot of friends who like were born in the U.S. to parents of Latinx descent, and it's a very big struggle of like identity and finding those roots when you don't have something visual or tactile to connect to. So I think it was a lot of conversations with them, and I think it's a very common struggle for a lot of us, so it wasn't hard for me to connect.
If I could tag on a little bit. So I grew up not speaking Spanish because my dad was learning English when I was born. So we spoke English around the household so that he could learn English. And so because of that, I never really learned Spanish. And then I did a little bit in elementary school, and then I didn't later. So I kind of lost that. And because my mom, a lot of the time, is kind of fighting in this world as a Hispanic woman, she's always had to try a lot harder to get where she is. And now she's in like a very good place, but before she had this struggle with her identity that then was passed on to me because she was trying her hardest to kind of fit into this white world. And so then I also then developed this kind of whiteness. That's why I like have her get called a gringa, because like that is very much how I saw myself for a very long time.
I actually have a follow-up question just as VK.
Not as mom.
With that being said, how does it feel to, be a person of color, Spanish speaker of the Latinx community, on stage and able to speak Spanish, and it's coming from people like you, right? And furthermore, how does it feel to see your work come alive in an environment, in an educational system, and a country that doesn't value work from us, by us? And you just wrote this, and it's your words, and you're speaking Spanish on stage, and
Awesome. I think for me that's really beautiful. I think it's Spanish is a language that I love. I think it's beautiful, and the fact that I get to speak it means a lot to me. In the play, it's something I love to incorporate Spanish into a lot of the work I do. It's like the first language I spoke. I still like think in Spanish sometimes.
And with regards to making the show, so I had Sam as my thesis director, who is one of the most supportive people you will ever meet. And basically from the beginning, he was like, this is an important story that only you can tell, because this is your family, it's your history. And so I kind of ran with that, and I was like, what does it mean to me to be Puerto Rican? And then I wrote it down as a play. But at the same time, seeing it on stage and as it like was all coming together, as I guess a person of color dealing with colonialism in the show, you become very aware of the fact that a lot of what you might have written and have people say on stage can be inflammatory. And like that there's almost this fear. I remember, I think 3 nights ago, before the first opening, the first show, I couldn't sleep, and a lot of that had to do with like, I was just thinking that people are gonna hate me, and they're gonna like, they're not gonna like me because of what I had to say on stage, what I wrote down. And that's something that I had to grapple with and just kind of deal with, because it's a story that needs to be told, and there's no point in backing down because this is just life for some people.
Any other questions?
I have a question about the author, Rafael Cancel Miranda.
Sí.
How many books of poetry were published?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, because a lot of them have been lost and they're not being published anymore. I know of 7, but I don't know the full answer to that question. At my house, I have 5, and I know of 2 more, and I received 1 yesterday because he was here yesterday. Yeah. So I have 6. Yeah.
Where does he live now? In
Mayagüez.
In Mayagüez, todavía?
Yeah. He flew in. It was really cool.
So when he starts writing again, or if these books come back into publication, you're going to put a link on Facebook, right? So you can go to
Definitely.
Yeah. I saw your hand.
Yeah, couple of things. One thing I just wanted to say for me personally, that I'm really glad that a story like this is told, because this is something, this idea of like being like Spanish enough, or like this idea of being like, because I've kind of experienced this as well. It's not obviously it's not to the same degree. Like both my parents were from Ethiopia, and they came here to America, but my sister and I were born here. And something that I've struggled with is feeling that I wasn't as Ethiopian as like my family or other people in my community, because I didn't speak the language. Similar to you, because my parents, they wanted to make sure that I knew English, so they didn't have me speak anything. And now that I'm older, I'm having to deal with this struggle. I mean, like, I'm trying to learn, but it's like I'll never get to that level. But like, if you could go back in time to talk to your younger self, dealing with this experience, like if there was now that you're in this certain place, like if you could give your younger self advice on dealing with this almost like clashing of ideas, and like dealing with like nationality and identifying, like what would you give?
Definitely learn Spanish. Like that because I like legitimately the language is such a connector when it comes to like a person's culture or ethnicity, whatever the buzzword you want to use today. That I think if I had maintained or continued my Spanish, I think I would have this better connection. But at the same time, where I am right now, I don't want anything to have changed. Because I feel like with that being said, I have learned a lot, and it has put me on the track that I am now. And I'm happy with that, and it's allowed me to share this story. And I can't guarantee that had I learned Spanish, and had I not had that struggle, that this story would have been told.
Another question? Yes. Yes, go for it.
So I'm hearing, right, like, and I'm glad that you said that, Erin, because like this story, I was like, oh, I'm Cuban, my grandparents, not exact same, but similarly ending up in prison of some kind, and then moving on, and but then the irony of like, who is the colonizer, right, though, because you're like, I was there with great people like Fidel, right, but then I'm like, no, wait, just kidding, it's all about perspective. So I'm like curious, what other research have you done to other revolutions that were happening at the time and or before that maybe like could help inform if you wanted to grow this?
As of yet, I have not done that much research outside of this because I've been kind of hyper-focused on like the history of Puerto Rico specifically, like for my thesis project. That being said, I actually, because you brought it up, the Fidel Castro line, I've been thinking a lot about that specifically.
Yeah.
Legitimately in the past 2 weeks, I've been thinking about that a lot. And I fully intend, it's on my to-do list, to do like historical revolutionary research on Cuba specifically, especially because Cancel Miranda was exiled to Cuba for a while after. So the specific thing, we talked about this yesterday, he got out of prison because Castro made a deal with Carter to let him out, and then he was sent to Cuba and wasn't allowed back to Puerto Rico for a while. Yeah.
See, but just that overlap to me, that we were just islands that weren't very far apart within 10, 15 years of each other, is really interesting because we are so kept apart systematically to hate each other, right? That to actually hear the story and say, wow, that's actually not that different, even though you're gonna say the people who are my family's like heroes are the villains in this story, but you know, I don't know, I just think it resonated. I wanted to say that so that it would maybe help.
If I can just piggyback off that, that's like a great question, and it's something on Friday. Someone asked me how my Cuban identity like helped me with this, and I think a big part of it was Cuba went through something similar. I fled with my family for the same reasons. Communism was like ruining us, my family. So, but I mean, my abuela tells me stories about what it was like when Batista was in power, and we were still under like this capitalist regime, and like the United States was very, very involved in that, and a lot of people were suffering and in poverty. And like when Castro came in power, he was a hero to many people because it was change, it was revolution, and what happened afterwards, you know, has to do with Castro as a person, and that's different. But it's important to consider that we weren't like this story is very real, and perspective is really important.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, I know y'all got it in you. One more. No? Okay. Thank you all for coming, joining us for the show.